Welcome to another exciting TIES webinar. TIES is the Teacher Institute for Evolutionary Science, and we provide free resources for teachers in K through 12 education. And today we have Susan, and we're going to be talking about slime, and we're very excited about that. And other than some slime mold that I have growing in the mulch in my backyard, I am not too familiar with it, but we are excited to learn more. So take it away.
Thanks, Kenny. Thanks for the invitation. This is really exciting. I love talking about slime. So thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone who's here now, or maybe will watch the recording later. I hope you get away with a new appreciation for the stuff. So the first question, of course, is what is slime? I mean, that's, I've been busy researching this stuff for years, 5 or 6 years, and I still find it hard to define or to answer the question. Right at the beginning, I talked to a researcher who studies microbial slimes for his definition, and he said it's not a specific substance, it's more like a quality that different materials can have. And I think this is really spot on, because I think, would call a slime whatever has that characteristic sliminess, the oozing, the creeping behavior. Maybe it's slightly sticky. That's a slime, and of course different materials can have that. That same researcher called slimes stiff water, and that's again spot on, because that particular behavior is not just some random occurrence, but it's based on an inner structure. And biological slimes, the ones that I'm interested in, are hydrogels. That's a technical term, and it means hydro, of course, that there's a lot of water in there. At least 95% of biological slimes are water. And the trick is that water is bound in a 3D network of molecules, so it can't flow as freely as it usually would. The fascinating thing for me was, which I didn't know at the beginning when I started out on the book project, is that these fascinating slimes aren't just something that maybe microbes or hagfish or snails or humans produce, but all life is slimy, really, all life, and probably from the very beginning. Or let me say, like, if you know a slime-free creature, let me know about it, because it would be most fascinating to know why they stop producing slime. So for now, I just say all slime, all life produces slime, be it microbes, fungi, plants, animals, including us humans as well. And here in that slide, I have just 2 examples. To the left, that's a microbial slime. We call them biofilms. And this one came from a lab, so it's really pretty with the color. But usually microbial slimes they look like a blob, formless often, so you don't see how complex they are, but they're really, really highly structured, even if you don't see it from the outside. And some scientists even call them cities for microbes, because that slimy matrix has a structure. There are real like neighborhoods with different microclimates, so that even different species of microbes can come together, and they will find their own neighborhood that fits them best. So let's say one species can't tolerate oxygen, it will be deep down in the slime, others more on top, but they also cooperate, those microbes, even if they're not from the same species. So they share the food, they collect the garbage, they have tunnels in the slime to distribute the water. And a bit like a gated community, they are very well protected in that slime. And that's a problem for us if we have, let's say, an infection in the body, and those microbes come together, they build a slime, then it's incredibly hard to get to fight them back, because that slime will even keep out antibiotics. Another slime that keeps us busy every day is dental plaque, for example. It doesn't look like much, but it's still, again, that same highly structured and incredibly hard to fight microbial slime. You just have to think about it. I mean, we can fly to the moon, we've invented the internet, but we still have to brush our teeth, because there's no other way to get rid of that slime. It's just so robust. Plants use slime as well. like that sundew here. It's a carnivorous plant, of course, and it has those sticky droplets to catch prey, like flies or other insects. And I have to say that animals use the glue traps, the slimy glue traps as well. So that's really popular. Plants also have slime on their roots to store water and to communicate actually with other organisms in the soil. So yeah, slime is basically everywhere. And if we look just a bit closer, where do organisms need slime? Then it's mostly on interfaces. That means where the organism meets the environment and is exposed. So, for example, the human body, the most obvious barrier obviously is the skin, and that's a really tight and complex and dense barrier. So not much is supposed to go through the skin. But it's different on the inside. The airways, the digestive tract, the genital tract, they can't close themselves off altogether because we have to take up oxygen and we have to take up nutrients, maybe the occasional sperm. So these barriers, they have to fight back because there are lots of microbes obviously come in with every breath we take, with every bite we eat. But they have to stay open. And these are all slimy barrier. That's the mucus that we sometimes get to see. For example, if you have a cold and the nose is running, that's like the mucus production is ramped up to transport microbes out of the body. And the fascinating thing is that not only are these barriers so complex, these mucus barriers, but we know that they can trap pathogens. They sometimes remove them, sometimes they kill them. But this is really new research. Like you see here, that's an illustration of a coronavirus in pink in a saliva droplet. These are the droplets, the aerosols that we've heard so much about. And this is why we have to, or we're supposed to wear masks to keep those droplets to ourselves, not spread them everywhere. You see the coronavirus in that watery droplet. And that's at first a good thing for the virus because the water keeps it, prevents it from drying out. But you also see those green structures. And these are molecules that bind the water, that make the slime in a sense. And we now know that they can even, let's say, sing microbes to sleep. This is really new stuff that's just come out recently, that the microbes are there. They're not dying, they're alive, but somehow those molecules keep them from ganging up and becoming dangerous, building biofilms, for example. And if we have to understand much better how that works, but of course there could be many therapies in there if we could use them. So it's pretty clear, I think, that slime and the mucus in our body, in all organisms, is much more complex than maybe we thought at first. And that has a lot to do with the inner structure. Slimes are somewhere between liquid and solid. They're in a sense both at the same time. They're liquid and solid. And the really fascinating thing about it is that they can change this behavior. If maybe a slime is more liquid, it becomes more solid, and the other way, depending on the environment and depending on the pressure it's under. And this here you see a snail crawling on its slime, and you see that pattern, those stripes moving along. These are muscle contractions that move along the sole, and these contractions are like waves that push down on the slime. And wherever they push strong enough on the slime, the inner scaffold will just collapse, and the slime will, on that particular spot, be more liquid. That means the snail can glide there. It's more like a really smooth lubricant. Once the wave has passed, the slime will harden again, and the snail can push off, but only on that particular spot. And this explains, because this has been a mystery for a long time for scientists, how do snails move? Or one put it that way, how can an animal with only one foot crawl on chewing gum? Because slime is so sticky, obviously. And this is how they do it. They destroy the inner scaffold, but then the slime heals itself. So that's one amazing thing that slimes can do. And that game between slime with one behavior that changes because its environment changes. That's something that our own body uses it as well. Apologies for the analogy here, but you probably all know the fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty. I mean, she's asleep, as princesses often want to do, for 100 years. And many princes come and try to wake her up, but they can't get through because there's this hedge, this thorny hedge around the castle, and they all die. And then one day, one more prince shows up, and he doesn't really do anything. So there's no fighting with dragons, no riddles to solve. He doesn't even have to show courage. He just shows up. And because he has perfect timing, he shows up right after 100 years when the curse is to be lifted anyway, and she's bound to wake up anyway. The thorns become flowers, the way opens up, he wins the prize. And it's a bit like that when it comes to sperm, because the female organism has a huge problem when it comes to sperm. So obviously, at least occasionally, sperm and egg cells have to meet deep inside the female body, but that's also a gateway for pathogens, for parasites. So it's not smart to keep that open all the time. That means there is, right at the beginning at the cervix, a really strong slime barrier that's usually that closes off that gateway more or less completely. Only for a few days during each cycle, when actually there is an egg cell ready to be fertilized, it will become much thinner. The organisms just regulates that, and it's open, and fit sperm can go through and try their luck in a sense. But even then, defective sperm will be filtered out. So even then, it's not completely open. So yes, like I said, slime is amazing, can do many, many, many amazing things. Why are we so disgusted by this stuff? In a sense, from a biological viewpoint, it's a smart thing to be disgusted by slime, because disgust, that's one of our basic emotions, is supposed to prevent that we get into contact with dangerous pathogens and parasites. And that means you should just shy away whenever there's potential danger. And there should be a strong reaction. You're not supposed to touch it and think about it if there's maybe a strange slime or something. You're not supposed to eat it, obviously. So our disgust system has to be very fast, and this is just a strong reaction. But there's a problem. Microbes are called microbes because they're so small that you need a microscope to see them. So how should it prevent us from touching any microbial stuff if we can't perceive them, right? I think that our disgust system reacts to triggers that are often a symptom of microbes, of microbial dish, like a bad smell. So if there's a really bad smell, of course, we will just step back. And the same goes for slime. And slime often is associated with microbes. They produce it themselves, the biofilms, and then our own slimes are often loaded with microbes. So if you sneeze, like if you have corona and you sneeze, then everywhere around you will get it as well. So it's smart to be disgusted. But I think there was just some safety mechanism that for most of human history, people were inclined to be disgusted, but everyday life prevented it. They could just give in to that disgust, because it means if you don't have a fridge, if you don't have a kitchen, then you have to eat food that's maybe a bit dodgy. If you don't have clean water, you have to drink dirty water. If there's no hospital, you have to take care of your family if they're sick yourself. So there's always a balance between be disgusted as you can be, but yeah, if you have to deal with it, then you will do that. And I think that's again my theory, that at least in industrialized countries, we have outsourced slimes. We have sanitation systems. There's always fresh food in the fridge. There's supermarkets. The garbage is being collected. It's not rotting in the street. So even though slime is such a basic material of life, I mean, there is no life without slime. It's not something that we encounter every day all the time. And my theory is now that at least in industrialized countries, that slime disgust is going over the top. Yeah, nothing is holding it back anymore. And I speak from experience here. When I started out on the book, I thought it was just another just normal nonfiction book that I was writing. Interesting, because there wasn't a slime book before like that. But when I told friends about that, they only had to hear the word slime and they were so disgusted by the word alone, just saying I write about slime. I have relatives who like me and who say they would love to read a book written by me, but just not about that topic. They can't bring themselves to crack it open. They can't read it. It's so strong, the disgust. And another new one, unfortunately, booksellers, quite a few of them refused to stock the book because the topic they thought was too gross. Not even the book. There's nothing in the book that's particularly gross, I think. They just didn't want to have it in the shop. So that's a bit much, I think. So being disgusted like that is a luxury that we indulge in, I think. And this would be my explanation why pop culture just loves slime. So there aren't really any monsters, there aren't any aliens nowadays that aren't slimy. They all drool, they all ooze, and you know immediately, okay, this must be the alien, right? So that's the niche where we allow slime to exist and make itself known, but only in small doses, I think. But that's from my view is a pity, because there's so much interesting going on among the slimers of the world. For example, slime mold. So this is a slime mold, the yellow stuff eating a mushroom, and this is such a strange creature that we can't even tell if it's a organism or if it's somehow a multitude. This is one cell, but in that cell there are thousands of cell nuclei, and no one knows how they make decisions. I mean, they're all in there. There's no hierarchy. How do they decide we go left, not right? No one really knows. And creatures like that, simple as they are, absolutely challenge our notions of things like intelligence. So surprise, surprise, intelligence for the longest time has been defined as something that you produce or that you have when you have a big brain, just like us. But of course, and there are creatures like the octopus, very smart, but just a totally different kind of brain. And then you have a creature like this, which is just one cell, no brain, no structure. It's just flowing away. And it still makes very smart decisions. Put oats somewhere, it will always fruit in a very short time. So this is smart.
Susan, we lost your audio. We still cannot hear you.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, like I said, the creatures like the slime mold challenge the notion, and some, because you can't call it like traditionally intelligent. This is why some scientists call it a liquid brain. It's just something different, but it's still smart. And then there's even more to the slime. So what you see here is my former pet slime.
We lost your audio again.
No.
Now we hear you.
Okay, so that's my pet slime mold, and you see the oats in front that it's eating, and the yellow stuff is the slime mold, and you see that white structure, right? And these are ghost trails that slime molds leave behind. They move through the area, they search for food, and if there's nothing there, they will pull back, but leave the slime there that dries, but still it's there. And the slime mold can recognize it once it comes again, and it will read from its own slime trails. Okay, I've been there. There's no food to find. Let me move another way. So this is like an external memory. The slime is an external memory. And we know that snails use slime the same way. There's their trails, for example, to find mating partners. Snails can read slime trails, foreign slime trails, and males will know, okay, which species went there? Is it a she? Is she pretty? Is she healthy? Which direction did she go? So he can find her. There are carnivorous snails, like the rosy wolf snail. It has a lip that looks like a mustache. That's basically a slime scanner. It scans foreign trails and knows, okay, this is the trail of a potential mating partner. This is the trail of a prey snail, and will follow them. Limpets who live in the tidal zone, they go out to graze when the tide is high, but before the water pulls out again, they have to go back to their home place where they're safe from drying out, and they have to find a way back, which is why they follow their old trails. They just follow their own slime trails back. And another one which I find is absolutely neat. There's the owl limpet in California that even grows algae, cultivates algae on its own slime so that it can feed on that. So it's like a little slime garden. You see, there's a lot you can do with slime, and this is why many scientists try to study biological slimes from other creatures to learn from them and maybe find new applications that we could use. For example, glues. Our synthetic glues are terrible, more or less. So they're often toxic. They don't really work underwater. You know that if you have a Band-Aid somewhere and you take a shower, that Band-Aid will fall off. And that's not a problem for many, many, many animals. Obviously, marine animals, they all stick underwater: sea stars, mussels, snails, and so on, limpets. And even slugs in the garden can do it. And this is a velvet worm that's really, really old species. That's really slow, but it likes to eat meat. So how do you do that if you can't run after your prey? You shoot it. You might see on the head, on the side, there's this nubbly thing. It has 2 cannons, one on each side of the head, and those cannons shoot long, like streams of slime, and that slime hits the prey, hardens out right away, and even grasshoppers, strong grasshoppers, they can't move, and they have to await their fate while the velvet worm is on its way. And that glue is so interesting for scientists because even when it dries out, you can reactivate it. You just put some water in it, it sticks just like before. This is another thing that our glues can't really do. There are other applications, like if you remember that, the slime that I showed before, why is it so disgusting? That's like a texture, like a textile in a sense. That is hagfish slime. Hagfish live on the bottom of the sea, and they produce this amazing tough slime. They can even gag sharks and clog their gills and scare them away. And that slime is so tough because there are long fibers in there. And if we could use those fibers, we might get new eco-friendly textiles. Even, I've read that, I have no idea if that's true, a new generation of bulletproof vests. And another thing, this is, again, what I've read, I don't know if this project is still ongoing, that the US Navy has a problem to stop ships. So if they want to know if there's, I don't know, people smuggling something, it's dangerous and it's hard to stop a boat. But then why not use hagfish slime by just pouring the molecules into the sea, and then everything turns to jelly, and the ship, of course, could move on. Again, this doesn't work yet, and I'm not sure if it will ever happen, just to show you how broad the potential applications are. And these aren't just ideas. This is actually a glue that they developed at the Wyss Institute in Boston, that's modeled after slug slime, just ordinary slugs from the garden. And this is an amazing thing. They tried this in animals already, and it will stick even if you put it on a beating pig's heart, I think is where they tried it. And of course, there's blood, that it's wet, and the muscle is contracting. So every regular glue would just fall off. This one sticking there even over tens of thousands of contractions. And I think in the next phase, they even operated on young rabbits that were still in the womb. I mean, humans have some diseases that would be best to work in it, to operate on that early on, but then you have to close the amniotic sac again, and that's a huge problem. And as I understand it, that glue did that in the animal model, so that amniotic sac stayed closed just with the glue, even while that rabbit was growing, kicking, moving. No problem at all. So there's a lot we could learn if that ever really works out. Which brings me to my last point. We have to hurry up. to understand slimes, to use them, even if we want to imitate them, because obviously we are losing many species. There's this huge biodiversity crisis, and with the animals and with the different species, we lose their slimes as well. And that's a potential problem for the environment as well, because these slimes are everywhere. It's not like everyone keeps them to themselves. Microbes, for example, produce slimes that stay in the environment and shape habitats. Even in the desert, crazy as that sounds, that watery stuff in the desert, these are tiny communities that are really hard to see and to detect on the floor of deserts and arid regions, with bacteria, algae, mosses, stuff like that. But the pioneer species is always bacteria that produce their slime and anchor everyone there. And that's important for those very dry regions, because if the sand or soil particles are glued together, they're protected from erosion. So if those soil crusts, those communities die out, and they die easily, and they grow back only in years and decades, if at all, then erosion could just destroy the whole thing. The sea is another really slimy ecosystem. For example, on the surface, there's a slimy skin. We can't see it, but it's there. Microbes live there and produce their biofilms. And that's an incredibly important interface, because, as you probably know, the sea is taking up a lot of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So every single molecule has to go through the slime, while creatures in the sea produce oxygen that we need to breathe, and that has to go through in the other direction. Now, microbes love it when it's warm. So it's very likely that when the seawater is heating up, they might produce more slime. That skin of the sea might become thicker. No one really knows what will happen, but it's just such a huge interface, 2/3 of the planet. And it's right at the center of so many global cycles. So this is really an important question to answer eventually, what will happen there. And then, of course, we have lots of marine creatures that are very slimy. That was just a huge step, obviously, in evolution, when life went from the water on land, which included that we had to hide our slimes inside because they would dry out in air. It's just too dry here, but marine creatures can clothe themselves in slime. And some do really well, even if the sea becomes more acidic, even if it becomes warmer, like jellyfish. And there are many reports that we get those huge jellyfish blooms around the world. So they will probably benefit from a warmer world where many other species die out. Algae, bacteria, they will all thrive, which means that we could even take in some habitats, have something like a step back in evolution before animals were even invented. I mean, jellyfish obviously are animals, but there were times in evolution for billions of years where there was only microbial life, lots of slime that's covered everything. And this could happen in some areas of the sea again, where we have only those gelatinous creatures that are basically slime, algae mats, microbial biofilms covering everything. And as much as I love slime, I mean, that's a scary thought, a new era of slime. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. I wasn't that grossed out. So many of the people who will be watching this webinar are teachers and students. Can you just talk a little bit about your background, because you're a journalist?
My background actually is I have 2 university degrees, one in biology, one in political science, but I've never worked in the lab. After that, I've only been a journalist, and mostly I've written about biology, medicine, stuff like that. And then that's a slime story. I mean, I think I had the idea first about 20 years ago when I read an article in a magazine, New Scientist, about slime in general, in particular about those snail trails that they find their mating partners via the slime trails, foreign slime trails. And that just simply stuck with me, because I thought it's just impossible that first of all, I had never thought about slime. I had never even thought that slime is a thing. You know, we usually just know slime as garbage. A piece of fruit is rotting, then it doesn't go from solid to liquid in one step. There's just some slime in between, right? But it's just increasing disorganization. The cells break open and the liquid comes out. So I always thought that slime, that's just garbage. It's not a thing. It's so formless. I mean, who would think that dental plaque is highly structured? If you look at the studies that they've taken, who lives where there, it's like absolutely as if you were looking at a city with different neighborhoods. So that those snails stayed with me, and I always thought I want to dive deeper, see if there has to be more there. But for a long time, I thought it's just maybe some other species that are interesting. And it took just more than 10 years for me to take the time to say, okay, now I really dig in. And then suddenly, I mean, there were just some small stories, and it's like a thread you pull, and then an avalanche comes after. Yeah.
And then our last question is for students who are interested in pursuing scientific journalism, what background or education would you encourage them to get into after high school?
I think if you want to be a science journalist and it has anything to do with biology, nature, you have to know about the crisis that we're facing or that we are already in right now. Because I'd say I write a lot about climate change. I'm not a climate journalist, but wherever you start out, you end up with climate because climate is such a problem. I mean, my story now with slime is that it's not only everyone will die out, but it's okay. Some slimes will benefit from this, but do we want this? I mean, if you remember, maybe 2 years ago, the Marmara Sea in Turkey, that is rather shallow, closed in, and where it's rather polluted with nutrients from agriculture, where they had this huge algae bloom, that green marine snot, as it's called. Mm-hmm. This could happen at other places as well, of course. It's warm, there's so many nutrients to go around. And if you have all those snails, all those creatures with their mineral shells and skeleton dying out, or even just lots of them, and they're overfishing, then the slimers will survive and they will thrive. And I mean, I know that the question, are there really more jellyfish bloom, or is it just that we now notice them more and that there's some record of that? But I think it's really unusual that you have in Japan, for example, jellyfish that are huge like fridges, and that will capsize boats if fishermen get them into the net. And they're clogging up the cooling systems of power plants because they suck up just the water, and then you get all those jellyfish. So with slime, it's always about the balance, just like in our body. Just broadly speaking, in the airways, too much slime is a problem. You have the colds, asthma, cystic fibrosis, diseases like that. In the digestive tract, it's if you don't have enough. If the barrier gets too thin, then you get all that inflammation, morbus Crohn, all those diseases. It's all about the balance, and it's the same in nature. And I never thought that I would write about climate change, but whichever topic I pick out now, it's not complete until I write about that. So I would say focus on that. I mean, obviously, I'm lucky now because this is a treasure trove of stories. I didn't expect. I thought this was a niche topic, and suddenly it's like, okay, everyone's sliming, and that stuff is so much more complex than I thought. And it's an environment. So every single disease has to do with slimes in our body, cancer, infection, everything. So it's cancer, it's pop culture, it's climate, it's everything. It's aliens. I mean, astrobiologists who try to figure out how alien life would look like, they look at slime on Earth. Because obviously for billions of years, life here was just microbes with slime. I didn't expect, so this is a treasure trove, but focus on the crisis that we have now. This, unfortunately, is not going away. And then maybe find your niche in combination with that. This I think, we need more people like that. So it's not only helpful to students who are interested, but we badly need people going there and writing and reporting on that stuff.
So thank you everyone for joining live, and thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
You too.